Boom, shakalaka laka. All right. We're back. You're listening to America's Voice Now. Thanks for riding with us today. We're back in the saddle. Last segment. And we are going to touch on a touchy subject. Common Core. If you're not familiar with Common Core, you ought to be. It's a pretty dangerous program. It is a program that is misunderstood, given a pass when it shouldn't be, and it is just another example of the creeping illness, the virus of totalitarianism slipping slowly about us and gathering us up, annexing us in. I draw the analogy to, you remember that movie? I'm going to date myself right now, but you remember there was a movie out there called The Blob. It had Steve McQueen in it. I can't think of the woman's name, but basically this thing landed from space. And I've used this analogy before, so if you're a long-time listener, just live with me. This thing landed and it from space, and it fell out of a cocoon or some stupid thing. I can't remember. It was in the 60s. And it was about the size of a marble. And it ate an ant, and then, it grew a little bit, and then it ate a grasshopper, and then it ate a mouse, but slowly but surely this thing is growing and growing and growing and growing. Soon it's eating cattle, and it's eating people, and so forth and so on. And towards the tail end of the movie, the climax of it is McQueen and this woman are inside of this bowling alley, and this thing is so big, it's enveloped the entire building now, and it's oozing in the windows. It was just The Blob, right? One of them campy horror movies that you watched on Chiller Theater, where a six-fingered hand came out of the ground. Anyway, I digress. The point is, where we are sliding into, and this goes back to my earlier segment about totalitarianism, is we are sliding and being slowly but surely absorbed, like the blob. It just surrounds you and absorbs you. And every aspect of our society, our free enterprise marketplace, our educational system, the changes that are being instituted in the fabric of our society and our belief system, the destruction of those things which so many people construe and consider to be sacred, the issue of marriage, the issue of abortions, the issue of immigration and sovereignty of our borders, and all of those types of issues. Slowly but surely, you're being manipulated into accepting a pre-decided upon, pre-agreed positioning you don't want. You're not even really given the choice. In other words, it's fostered upon you, and you're told that under threat of force and coercion of police power, you're going to accept this. Perfect example is Obamacare. Another example is the student loan thing we just talked about. When government annexes out industry and puts itself in place, it captures one more of the elements of our society. And now our education system, which has long been under attack by a national agency, which is unconstitutional in its face, is now instituting these Common Core education standards. And I got to tell you, there is a tidal wave of people that are upset about this nationwide. School boards are getting beaten to death over this by citizenry, and yet they're standing there and they're giving the false assumption that this is all state-led stuff. It has nothing to do with we've taken the principles of Common Core and we've modified them to fit our state. Lie. Flat out, bald-faced lie. And I'm going to tell you something. If you are of a moderate to conservative position and viewpoint of history and all those types of things, I got to tell you, you ought to read one of your kids' textbooks. You're going to be doing cartwheels by the end of it. This is so far to the progressive and the leftist and liberal mindset that the indoctrination that our children are getting in public schools is essentially teaching them to be these indoctrinated little good boys and girls who never question authority and do exactly as they're told. And I got to tell you, that's the truth. Ask your kids what they're learning in school. Why don't you take the time to go out there and do a little quiz. Just write a pop quiz about some stuff that you know from history. Go out and do your homework to make sure you're formulating the questions correctly. But this should be stuff every kid ought to know. And then I want you to sit down with your kid and ask them, him or her, to answer that pop quiz. Make it 5 or 10 or 20 questions. And if you're afraid to do it in a formal setting, just every once in a while, when they come home from school, say, what about this question in history? Have you learned that yet? And hear what they have to say. Make sure it's age appropriate for their period in school. You obviously you don't want to ask them a question that would be above their grade level, but you're going to find some astounding information. And I suspect that what you're going to find is some frightening information. You're going to realize how far down the rabbit hole our education system has fallen. And the reason it's fallen down there is because we have lost control of it on a local level. Now, the argument that they will give you is, but these are national standards, so every child is equal in terms of their knowledge. Well, let me ask you a question. We have seen, over the past couple of decades, the slide in the standing of American education system to, I think we are ranked 23 globally. Yes, you heard me right. 23 is our international ranking for education quality. So, I got to ask you, how good a job are they really doing here? Are they doing a good job? Or is this all just more opportunity for the government to indoctrinate our children to the point where they are not critically thinking, they are not independent thinking, they have no level or no concept of individuality. They are just a part of the collective, absorbed into the blob, if you will. That's exactly what we're experiencing. And listen, if federal government was doing such a good job at education, why are we 23? If Arne Duncan, who, by the way, he's the head of the National National Department of Education, the guy is, listen, I know I'm going to get some hate mail about this, but he's gay, first and foremost, which I couldn't care less about. I don't care who you sleep with. That's entirely up to you. You do what you want to do. Just don't force it down my throat. But what I do have a problem with is a pamphlet that he printed up that teaches kids as young as 8th graders and freshmen in high school about how they can explore the gay lifestyle. And that I got a problem with. I don't think that's an educator's job to enter into the sexual thinking of our children and offer them an alternative that they ordinarily may or may not have a predilection for in the first place. If you have gay thoughts when you're that's fine, whatever you want to do. I don't agree with it, but listen, everybody's different, right? And it's not my place to tell you what to think or how to think or anything else. I think a lot of it is fad-based anyway. But the point is this. When your child is given a pamphlet, and you can bet your bottom dollar they didn't get your approval about this, that talks about things like fisting, I got a problem with that. Talks about places where kids, and it's called the Little Black Book. You can look it up on the internet. Arne Duncan, A-R-N-E, Duncan, D-U-N-C-A-N, head of the National Department of Education, DOE, call themselves. That's also the Department of Energy. It's a little confusing. Anyway, Arne Duncan was behind the publication of this little pamphlet. It was 13 pages, and it talks about how not to get AIDS and in the gay lifestyle and all that stuff. My point is that the progressive indoctrination is continuing in a format and in a method that is completely unacceptable. Yesterday, I posted something up on our Facebook page about how a gay sex pundit was paid $24,000 to come in and do a speech to students at a university, and the topic was fisting, anal fisting. If you don't know what that is, go look it up. I don't want to get into it on the show. But it also talked about gorilla suit fetishes. And the guy who did it is a gay pundit, so he's a gay sex educator. So, of course, everything leaned towards the gay side. Well, The outrage is, guess what? The taxpayers paid for that. It's a publicly funded university. $24,000? Are you out of your mind? I mean, look, I don't care what you do or whom you do it with. But I tell you right now, as taxpayers, every one of us should be outraged that we are being abused, or we are being beaten with this indoctrination hammer. And you know what? That money that he was paid is being taken out of the mouths of your children to pay for these things that we don't agree with. It's criminal malfeasance, and it's embezzlement of public money. And it's nothing less. And this Common Core is just the same stuff. Now, I grant you, they're not getting into the sex education aspect, but what they are is they are doing selective rewriting of history. And they are, rewriting all of the standards of all of our social interactions. And everything is all about globalism, and everything is all about open borders, and everything is all about the open acceptance of and the idea that, nobody can be, everything is PC. Well, let me tell you what the truth is. They'll try to tell you in your home state, if you go to a school board meeting, the first thing they'll say to you is, well, wait a second, we haven't adopted Common Core. We've adopted a state version. The principles of Common Core are this, as fundamentally outlined, is that a kid can, whether they grow up in Miami or whether they grow up in Seattle or they grow up in Bent Elbow Dirt Road, Louisiana, they've all pretty much got the same education at 8th grade, 10th grade, 11th, whatever, right? And that they're uniformly meeting those targets, so that if a kid transfers from Miami to Bent Elbow Dirt Road, Louisiana, he's going to step into a relatively similar classroom situation in terms of his abilities for math and science and so forth and history. Well, there's a veteran educator, a woman by the name of Mary Black, and she has come out and written some rather excoriating and scathing information about this. She's actually put out a video about the national standards part of this, and she explains that state governments and citizens had nothing to do with the development and the rollout of this controversial game. This thing is being pitched at us as if it's all about state-led concepts. Well, let me tell you who's really behind it. It's dangerous stuff. The real origins of this program are the National Governors Association, the Council of the Chief State of School Officers, and Achieve Incorporated. Now, Achieve is a company that is pushing and promoting this, and they are the ones who are, claiming that this is a state-led effort. We'll stop right there. The National Governors Association and the Council on Chief State School Officers are trade organizations that are lobbying organizations based in Washington, D.C. They're trade associations. They're no different than the ACL or AFL-CIO or one of the, they're not a union, but they're no different than a lobbying organization and a trade association like the U.S. Department of Commerce, Chamber of Commerce. They have no business in the education game at all. The National Governors Association? Come on. They're not even based in the states that they claim to be representing. So, when we fought the Blue Ways a couple months back, one of the things that the government told us, the Blue Ways, if you don't know what that is, look it up on the internet. It's Blue Ways. It was the Department of Interior trying to abscond off with the control of 18 million acres in Arkansas and Missouri. They wanted dictatorial control over it. And one of the things that they kept pushing forth is the stakeholders agreed that it would be a good thing for the Department of the Interior to have control of all this land. Well, when we actually began to look into the stakeholders, they were organizations and groups that weren't here. In fact, many of them weren't even in the United States. They were international. They received all this leftist and progressive money from George Soros and groups like that. It was like the Nature Conservancy, right? And the Audubon Society. And all of these, ultra-left, what they want to do is turn that whole 18 million acres into a national preserve and allow wildlife to grow wild again and kick all the people out. Well, these stakeholders had never even been here. and this is the same deal. These people are the alleged stakeholders, but they're not in your community. They're not in your state. They're based out of Washington, D.C., where they walk around in $1,000 suits with $300 pairs of shoes, driving a Mercedes or taking a limo to work. Now, you tell me how that justifies them having an input on what your child is indoctrinated with in school. The truth of the matter is, it gets even worse. These are two non-governmental or NGOs. Anytime you hear the word non-governmental organization or an NGO, watch out. Watch your wallet and watch your spirit and your heart, because these groups are almost, for the majority of them, there's a couple of good ones out there, but the vast majority of these NGOs, non-governmental organizations, are nanny state busybodies who want everything to do about your control, but don't have any real consideration for what you, who and what, and your circumstances or anything else. They've got an agenda, and you're just livestock to be shuttled around. Achieve is an education-related group that is responsible for creating the standards that are applied in Common Core. Guess what? Guess who's really behind a lot of this? Bill and Melinda Gates and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Now, I got to tell you, when I first started to learn about Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, I was actually a little impressed with them, because they were going out there and they were spending their own fortune, which is obviously very considerable, and they were doing stuff like immunizing kids around the world, and I thought, well, that was pretty altruistic of them. But the more I learn about Bill Gates and Melinda Gates and their foundation, the less I like what they're actually doing. This is a group that is entrenched in this globalist philosophy. And what I find even more disturbing about it is that with the money that the Gateses have put into this, and the Achieve Incorporated, remember, let me tell you who Achieve was created by. The founders are all members of the Council on Foreign Relations. And that, ladies and gentlemen, ought to tell you almost everything you need to know. The founders of Achieve Incorporated, and it is a foundation. It's Achieve Foundation, right? So it's a not-for-profit and whatever. But here's the deal. The founders of the group and most of their board members are all members of the Council on Foreign Relations. Their chairman is actually a Bilderberg Summit attendee. And he wrote a column in the Wall Street Journal some time back in which he actually advocated, quote, abolish all local school districts, establish a set of national standards for a core curriculum, that's where the name Common Core comes from, and that he wanted to, that they wanted this organization to Achieve to represent the states. And this group has received over $30 million from the Gates Foundation to implement their dream of Common Core. Well, I got to tell you, that's a problem. These guys who are behind this, and Arne Duncan, I brought you to him to your attention earlier. Arne Duncan is as the head of Department of Education. He's been crucial in bribing and bullying the states with federal money to get them to acquiesce to this. They use coercion and corruption and misappropriation, frankly, of taxpayer money to get states to agree with their policies and procedures. And so they go in there and they say, well, if you don't apply this, then we're going to withhold something else from you that you desperately need. Well, guess what? Ms. Black comes out with a statement which is crucial to the understanding of going forward. At a press conference, when the idea of Common Core was released, Duncan threw his absolute full-hearted support behind a set of national standards. And he's been caught bragging to the United Nations and other organizations about his reform scheme. We're paying tens of billions of dollars in grants that are being used to bribe and manipulate and coerce state officials into accepting these Common Core standards. And these bribes are coming through stimulus funds. You remember the $787 billion TARP and all the stimulus money that came about when Obama first took office? That's where it's all coming from. These are slush funds for black ops projects that aren't military in their nature. They are designed to excoriate and destroy the fabric and the framework of our society and rebuild it in this new envisioned model of fundamental transformation. Well, I got to tell you, it's not state-led. It's national. It's globalist. It's indoctrination. It's intimidation. And your children's minds are being, there's a virus, like a computer virus, being installed in your child's hard drive. Okay? This is how you need to understand it. This Common Core concept and the entire curriculum is a virus, and it's being installed in your son or daughter's hard drive. You ever try to get one out of your computer? I rest my case, counselor. What you are seeing is the wholesale manipulation and indoctrination of our youth into these mind-numbing zombies who will walk around and do exactly as they're told, never question authority, never ask, never say, well, wait a second, I don't agree with that. I had a guy on our Facebook page. He's a listener, a steady listener, and he went in to vote yesterday in Virginia. And you know what he saw on a sign in the elementary school cafeteria? This is a quote. "I will accept consequences without arguing." Wow. I will accept consequences without arguing. So basically, do the critical thinking on that statement for a moment. You're going to accept the consequences of what? I mean, if the teacher is wrong and wrongly accused the student of some infraction, the child has to accept those consequences without arguing. Is this any different than the sign on the wall that says obey? No, it isn't. And this is what our children are being taught. This is propaganda that guys like Goebbels would be proud of. There is not a whole lot of difference, ladies and gentlemen. This is the same kind of crap that the Hitler Youth were fed. Your superiority, your brilliance, your self-esteem is pumped up. You get the good, warm, flow and feeling as your endorphins kick in, your mental endorphins. But the truth of the matter is, our nation is being let down dramatically. Our education has faltered. Our kids are not coming out with critical thinking skills. They're not even coming out with basic math, history, and science skills. I mean, we're 23rd in the world. What does that tell you? If this was so dad-blamed good, why are we 23? Well, this is going to improve it. No, that's what you said the last 9 crazy schemes ago. It didn't improve it for any of those 9 crazy schemes, and it's not going to improve it for this crazy scheme. The truth is, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to make a change, get on your school board. Run for school board. If you've got children in school, get on the school board or get your kids out of school and put them into homeschooling. I got to work 2 jobs. Then get collectively together with a few other parents in your community and put together a home school. And each of you go to a 4-day work week, and each of you work as a teacher for 5 days out of the week. I don't know what to tell you, but you better do something. Because I'm here to tell you, your children are being raised beneath you as automatons. And they will be the destruction of this nation. Those are the ones we're trying to hand off the torch of liberty to. And they don't even recognize it for what it is. We're handing them the pot of gold of liberty. And they look at it and say, what do I want that for? You've been listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I appreciate you riding with us this morning. Thank you very much. If you're catching us on our YouTube channel or on our podcast, this is our last segment. You'll be able to get these podcasts and download every show now as a single podcast all day long, just because it's easier to do that than try to break it up into 4 segments. Our YouTube videos will continue to be broken into 4 segments. I'll pause the camera in between each one. Okay, thanks for joining with us. Please visit our website at americasvoicenow.org. You can find all kinds of information there that is vital to your knowledge and education and your critical thinking. You can find all kinds of news stories there and sources for you to be able to find stuff that the Ministry of Propaganda is not telling you about, and they're sweeping it under the rug. Make sure that you're doing some homework and due diligence. Ladies and gentlemen, the core message here every day is simply this. It's up to us. We are in the last-ditch effort to try to save ourselves. We are 100% surrounded by the enemy. The enemy is this concept of globalization and the fact that, you are supposed to sacrifice yourself on the altar of altruism. I got to tell you, that's not a good thing. So stick with us. You're certainly welcome to participate with us. You can find our website at americasvoicenow.org. We encourage you to join with us there. You can find us on Facebook. Please like our Facebook page. It helps us to share our message with you and your sphere of influence on a personal level. And then you can find every video and podcast that we do up on YouTube as well. Thanks so much for being with us today. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Remember, folks, if it's up to change in this country, it's up to each one of us, right? We don't have an option to wait anymore and wait for somebody to ride up on a white horse and save us from ourselves. It's up to us and only us. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is when good men do nothing. Where do you stand? Have a great day.